Hello everyone, welcome back to Core Balance. This week we are doing Detox Flow. To begin, let's start reclining back into our mats, getting comfortable, letting that spine melt into the ground, and just take a moment here to find that breath, extending the feet out toward the end of our mat. Go ahead and take a deep inhale, breathing all the way in, filling up those lungs, feeling that diaphragm raise. And take a complete exhale, letting all of that air out. Feeling that diaphragm sinking back in toward the spine, tightening that core as we force all of that air out. Continuing to breathe normally. And on your next big inhale, take those arms up and overhead, extending the fingertips well beyond the crown of our head here. Pointing and flexing the feet, stretching all the way from the tips of our fingers down through the tips of our toes. Roll out the wrists if you'd like. Splay the fingers, ball your hands up in a fist a couple of times. Just getting all those little bits and pieces through our hands and our feet warmed up before class starts. Deep breath in, and exhale as we take our arms and our head, as well as our feet, out to the right side, keeping that spine pinned in place so that if someone were to look down from overhead, you'd be making like a C bend. Switching sides as we return back to neutral, and then following the feet out to the left, arms and the head out to the left as well, really feeling that stretch through the side body. Returning back to neutral. Another deep inhale here, and on that exhale, return the hands back down to the sides. Tightening that core, bringing some awareness into the center of our body here, feeling that spine melting down into the mat, really grounded down. And when you're ready, we're going in one swift motion, controlled motion, bringing the knees in toward the chest, but keeping those shins parallel with the ceiling or the sky. Taking a second here, kind of playing with your positioning. You want your tailbone to be up off the ground, but your lower back is completely pinned down to the mat. Really tight core. If you need a little extra assistance keeping that spine down, bring those knees closer in toward the chest. Otherwise, really try to keep a strong, sharp 90-degree angle. Just taking a moment here, finding that breath as we ground ourselves in. And when you're ready, clasping the fingers back behind the head, supporting the neck, we're going to lift just so that our shoulder blades come up off the mat, almost like a crunching motion, but we're keeping that neck long and lean. The shoulders are down away from the ears. Chin is lifted up out of the chest, extending, tightening, and lengthening all of those muscles through our core, and release. When you're ready, once more, lifting all the way up, staying strong through that core, engaging those muscles, keeping those shoulders away from the ears, really feeling that through the core. Deep breath in, and on the exhale, release, dropping the legs down to the right side. Knees are stacked, and take the arms out to either side as well, but keep those shoulder blades pinned down to the mat in a supine twist. Just a gentle twisting of the spine vertically. If you'd like, turn your head the opposite way that your knees are facing. So our knees are out to the right, and our gaze is going out to the left. Deep breath in as we return our head back to neutral, knees up to neutral, and then both knees fall over to the left, stacked on top of one another. Shoulder blades still pinned down to that mat. And again, if you'd like, turn that head the opposite direction that your knees are facing. So knees are to the left, our eyes, our gaze out to the right. Taking a breath here as we return the head to neutral, knees up to neutral. Bring those hands back down to the sides. Go ahead and tighten up that core, sending some of that energy, that mindfulness there, keeping the lower back flush with the mat. That spine is pinned down to the ground. When you're ready, both knees up, making that sharp 90-degree angle at the knee, but go ahead and make sure that that tailbone is lifted up off the mat, forcing down that lower back so everything is nice and flush with the ground. Tightening in that core. And when you're ready, arms out to the sides, palms up, lifting back into that crunch-like motion, but remembering we're keeping that neck nice and long, shoulders and ears away from one another, sending that gaze up toward the sky. Continuing to breathe here as we keep that core tight. Keeping that focus on the breath, continuing to breathe. Drop those shoulders if you feel yourself tightening up or tensing up. And lower those shoulders down, keeping the legs up in the air though, just taking a second to rest. Maybe pulling those knees in a little closer to the chest, opening up the hips if you need. And before we lift back up into position, lower that spine down into the mat. And when you're ready, lifting, shoulder blades coming up off the mat. The neck is long, shoulders away from ears. Continuing to hold that pose while we continue keeping that breath. We don't want to hold our breath here. Just a few more breaths. You've got this. Stay strong. And release. This time, soles of the feet come together. Knees fall apart from one another, opening up through those hips in a reclined butterfly position. You can take the arms up overhead if you'd like. Raising and lowering those knees, feeling that opening through the hips. Feeling that spine melting down into the mat. Maybe walk those feet in a little bit closer toward your body, really feeling that stretch through the insides of the hips. Relax that jaw, relax the face, letting all that tension go. With a big breath in, go ahead and bring those knees back up to neutral. Tucking the hands underneath the tailbone here if you'd like a little extra support, otherwise keeping them down to your sides. We're going to extend the feet back out to the end of our mat. This time, instead of bringing the knees in, we're going to bring the feet all the way up toward the sky in one swift motion. However you want to get there is completely up to you. And from here, we're just going to pedal the feet, flexing and pointing the toes, getting comfortable here. And still keeping in mind that that spine is flush with the ground. Tightening in that core, sending all that awareness into the center of our body, and when you're ready, slowly with control, lowering those feet all the way back down to the mat. Prepping ourselves one more time. Big breath in as we lift, feet up toward the sky, flexing those feet, pointing those toes, getting everything warmed up. Continuing to breathe and keeping that core tight. Exhale, lower those feet back down to the mat. Now at your own pace, following your own breath as we inhale, lift, exhale, lower, and continue to do this at your own pace for a few more breaths. Exhale, lower, inhale, lift, and exhale, lower, settling down into the mat. go ahead and walk those feet in toward your backside. And when you're ready, we're going to lift that pelvis up into a half bridge. Feeling that stretch through the glutes and across the top of the abdominals. Slowly lower yourself down and prep one more time, lifting nice and tall, leaving some space between the back of the neck and the mat, just lifting that pelvis up toward the sky. Lowering down slowly with control. And when you're ready, once more breathing in as we lift. And exhale, lower. Inhale, lift that pelvis up toward the sky. And exhale, lower. Breathing in as we lift, expanding that rib cage. Full breath in, and as we lower, exhale out. Continue this at your own pace just for a few more breaths. And on that next lift, hold it, tightening those glutes, tightening that core, continuing to breathe, but just tightening all those muscles. And on your next big exhale, go ahead and release it all down into the mat, drawing those knees into the chest. Give yourself a little hug, rocking from side to side, massaging that spine. Continuing to breathe, find that breath. Extending the right leg back out, pulling that left knee in close to the body, and switch, right knee into the body, left leg extends out. Just a little extra stretch through those hips, and both knees in, drawing the knees in toward the underarms. From here, go ahead and reach between the legs here, looping your index finger and your middle finger through the big toes in a happy baby. Really feeling that stretch down in through our lower back, the backs of the thighs, all the way down in through our hips. And just continue to breathe here. And release, drawing those knees back in toward the body. A couple of rocks and rolls back and forth, bringing up some momentum. Taking your time though, but eventually coming up to a seated position. Sitting up nice and tall. Finding that breath. Good. Next, what I'd like you to do is transition onto your hands and your knees, remembering to stack those knees underneath the hips. The wrists, elbows, and shoulders are also stacked toward the front of the body here. A nice flat back position. Lowering yourself down just slightly, looping those shoulders back, drawing the shoulder blades together, and lifting yourself back up to that neutral position. And just like we've done in the past, as we inhale in, we drop that navel down toward the mat. And as we exhale, we round that spine up toward the sky. Stomach lower, breathe in. Spine rounds over, breathe out. Following your own breath. Rounding over, exhale. Rounding through, inhale. Just a few more times here. Maybe send it from side to side, the head and the hips to one side and then the other. Feeling that stretch through the side body if you'd like. And eventually returning back to that cat and cow, that rounding over and under of the spine. Great job. Take the hands out toward the front of the mat, extending the feet back toward the back of the mat, bringing yourself into a plank position. And once you've reached a comfortable plank, send that tailbone up toward the sky, melting into your heart, feeling the shoulder blades melt together, downward dog. Pump out the heels if you'd like, eventually drawing those heels down toward the mat, pushing away from those hands. And as we transition into our next flow, I'd like to remind you that we're going to lift that tailbone up nice and high and round over toward the front of our mat as we lower into that plank. Likewise, lifting all the way nice and tall as we settle back into that downward dog, and lifting up as we're pushing through back to that plank. Making a nice, easy, and seamless transition from the downward dog to the plank position, and following your breath, breathing in as we lift and settle into that downward dog, breathing out as we lift and transition back into that plank. Staying strong, keep that core strength. Just a few more times, back to downward dog. And good. As you lower into plank this time, go ahead and drop those knees. Coming up onto the knees, we're going to breathe all the way in and up. Taking the right hand back behind us, settling on the heel. Remember to open across the body here, sending that left hand up and back just slightly in a half camel. Release, and this time we're going to switch sides. Left hand to left heel. Right arm comes up and overhead, but remember dialing those shoulders down toward the heels. Carefully release. Breathing all the way in and up, and send it back to both heels. If this is too much, just keep the hands on the hips and give yourself a nice gentle back bend. Remembering that this is your home practice, you can modify to whatever feels comfortable for you. Go ahead and release, shake it out a couple of times, get comfortable. Rolling out the hands and the wrists if you'd like, and then transitioning back into that plank, and from that plank, sending it back into that downward dog. Feeling those shoulder blades pulling together, tailbone lifted toward the sky. When you're ready, send that weight into the left foot, lifting the right up toward the sky in a three-legged dog, and release. Switching your weight into the right foot, lifting that left leg up toward the sky, three-legged dog, and release. Continuing to alternate sides, right leg lifts as we settle in just a little bit deeper this time, and release. Left leg lifts, settling in, staying strong through those hands, just trying your best. And go ahead and drop those knees, sending it back into a child's pose. Forehead pressing down into the mat. Hands tucked back behind by our feet. Just feeling all that tension melting out of the shoulders. A few more calming breaths here. Remembering to breathe in completely and exhaling out completely. Go ahead and rise up nice and slow. And when you're ready, extending those hands back out in front of you, settling back into that tabletop position just briefly before transitioning into that plank. And from that plank, sending it back into a downward dog. As you're settling into the downward dog here, remember we're going to lift that right leg up toward the sky. This time as we bring it down, bringing the knee to the nose, feeling that crunching motion, and then release. Switching sides, left leg up. And as we come down into that plank, bringing the knee to the nose, exhale, release. Right leg lifts, knee to nose, right leg lifts, and release. Left leg lifts, knee to nose, leg back up, and release. Once more, right leg, knee to nose, back on up, and release. Last time, left leg lifts, knee to nose, left leg out, and release. Great job. Send it down into a plank. And go ahead and drop your knees, coming down into an extended child's pose for a moment. letting go of that tension in the shoulders, finding that breath. Walk those fingertips away from the body, really feeling that stretch. And when you're ready, coming back up onto that tabletop position, this time we're keeping the shins down on the mat, getting ready to do some half Chaturanga push-ups or yoga push-ups. Keeping those elbows close in towards the ribcage, slowly lowering ourselves down, hovering for a moment and pushing back up. Once more, prepping ourselves, tight core, lowering down, elbows in toward the body, and up. Readjust if you need to. Elbows into the ribs, and lift. One more, elbows in, lowering down and hold, right before you lift back on up. One more, I know you've got it in you, lowering down, keeping those elbows in, and release. Send it back into an extended child's pose for a moment, really pulling those fingertips away from the body, and release as we come back up into a downward dog. Prepping that weight into the left foot. Go ahead and lift that right leg up toward the sky, bringing that knee down into our nose, back up toward the sky, and release. Opposite leg, left leg lifts, through knee to nose, lifting back up, and release. Again on the other side, right leg in toward the center of our body here, extend and lower, left leg lift, through to the body, extend and lower. One more. Right leg lifts, knee to nose, lift and lower. Left leg lifts, knee to the nose, lifting back up and lower. From here, coming into that plank position, dropping those knees. From here, lowering yourself down into an upward dog. And from this upward dog, settling down into a Sphinx pose. So those forearms are propping us up. Feeling that mild stretch through the lower back, and the chin is parallel to the ground. Using this as an opportunity just to reset and lift right back up onto those knees, from the knees to a plank, and from that plank to a downward dog. Prepping the weight into the left, lifting the right. Right knee to the right elbow this time, back up. Right knee to the center of the body, and back. And right knee to left elbow, and back. Settling that foot back down in. Left leg this time lifts, left to the left, left to the center, and left knee to the right elbow. Great job, dropping down into that downward dog. From that downward dog, lowering ourselves from that plank into a chaturanga as we sweep up into an upward dog. And from that upward dog, back into an extended child's pose. Letting that tension melt. We just have a couple more steps that we're going to add on to this. You're doing great. Go ahead and prep yourself on all fours and back into that downward dog. Adding one more thing into it. You can do this. Prepping the weight into the left. And when you're ready, we're going to lift knee to elbow, knee to center, knee to opposite elbow. This time, rather than dropping that leg, we're going to bring it through to that low lunge here. Being sure to stagger the feet so we have plenty of surface area to work with. And when you're balanced, go ahead and lift up into a high lunge. In this high lunge, deep breath in as we bring our hands back to our sides, chest coming down to settle on that top leg, and release, coming back up to that high lunge. Exhale as we lean in forward, hands out to the sides, and inhale as we lift back up into that high lunge. You've got this. Sending it forward. And go ahead and drop those hands back into that low lunge, releasing that front foot to meet back into the plank. Back from that plank into the downward dog. And slowly lowering from that downward dog to a plank, and from that plank, lowering down into an upward dog. Full flow here. Send it back, downward dog. Prepping the weight into the opposite foot this time, lifting that leg, knee to elbow, knee to center, knee to opposite elbow, and as we sweep it through, stepping that foot into that low lunge, staggering the feet, find that balance and lift up into that high lunge. Staying strong through our base here, deep breath in. And as we exhale, send that torso forward, hovering the ribs above that top leg, arms out to the side. Inhale, lift, high lunge. Exhale, sending it forward, feeling that opening through the shoulders here. Inhale, lift. Exhale one more time, sending it forward. Last big breath in as we lift all the way up to the top and flow down, hands to meet the mat, stepping back into that plank. From plank, a very brief downward dog as we lower into plank, and from plank flowing up into that upward dog. Great job, you guys. Upward dog to downward dog. Pumping out the heels, just settling in here. Shoulder blades melt together, heels draw down toward the mat, lifting that first leg back up toward the sky, knee to elbow, knee to center, knee to opposite elbow, sweeping all the way through to that low lunge, lifting to that high lunge when you've got your balance, staggering the feet. Once more, sending it forward. Inhale, lift. Exhale, send it forward. Inhale, lift, sweeping those hands up toward the sky. Exhale, lowering forward. Sweeping those hands back up, and hands meet the mat. Stepping back that front leg, coming into the downward dog one more time. From downward dog to plank. From plank, slowly lowering down, sweeping through to an upward dog. Keeping that flow here, back to a downward dog. Right leg lifts, knee to elbow, knee to center, knee to opposite elbow. Lifting nice and tall, sweeping all the way through into that low lunge, stepping that front foot between the hands. And when you're ready, lifting up into that high lunge. And exhale, sending it forward, opening through those shoulders. Inhale, hands come up to the sky. Exhale, hands come back behind into the sides as we lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Last time, sweeping up nice and tall, hands up, and flowing down, hands to meet the mat, and that front foot steps back into plank. Lowering down, Chaturanga, and you sweep all the way up into that upward dog. Dropping those knees this time and sending it back into that child's pose. If you'd like, go ahead and press the forehead down into the mat here. Settling in, finding that breath, releasing that tension, and when you're ready, bringing the top of the head, that crown of the head, into the mat as we roll over slightly, a nice stretch through the back of the neck, and settle back into that extended child's pose to release very carefully. From here, pressing the forearms down into the mat, keeping them pinned down, lifting that tailbone almost like a downward dog, but from here we're in dolphin pose. Take those feet as wide as the mat. Tailbone lift nice and tall, and drop those knees to the edge of the mat. Settling those hips down in between the knees and the legs, back toward the feet, extended child's pose. Great job so far today, you guys. We only have a little bit left, and then we are through for this week. From here, go ahead and lift yourself back up into that downward dog, just briefly enough to walk the feet toward the hands at the top of the mat. While we're here in this forward fold, go ahead and clasp the elbows if you'd like. Just letting gravity do its thing, gentle twisting from side to side to open up those hips, relax that spine, letting all the tension out of our shoulders. And release the hands, coming up halfway, and from that halfway lift, root to rise, coming all the way up to that standing mountain pose. Finding a breath here, gentle twisting from side to side if you'd like. Just loosening up, decompressing. Roll the shoulders back. We're going to bring the feet about hip width apart. Deep breath in as the hands come up and overhead, and exhale, settling into that chair pose. Bringing the hands to heart center, sending that weight back through the heels. Inhale, lift. Exhale, chair pose. Inhale, lift. Last time, settling into that chair pose. Holding it here for a moment before we lift. Exhale, hands at heart center. Slowing things down a bit, breathing in. Exhale, settling down into that chair pose. Weight settles into the heels and the backside. Drop the shoulders. Tightening up that core. And release. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Hands to the sky. Exhale, hands to heart center as we lower into chair pose. Dropping it just a little bit lower this time if you can, and exhale, lift. Great job. For our final sequence here, we're going to mix things up just a bit. So bringing the feet about hip width apart or closer. We're going to breathe all the way in and up just as before. This time as we settle in though, the left elbow is going to meet the top of the right thigh. And you're going to use that left hand, pressing the right in nice and tall to wedge yourself using some leverage to lift up out of the hips. Gentle twist in the spine here, and carefully release as we exhale, coming into that neutral chair pose, and then as we lift up, hands come overhead. Exhale, hands at heart center. And when you're ready, we're going to breathe in and lift, settling down into that chair pose once more. This time though, the right elbow meets the left thigh, making some leverage for yourself, lifting nice and tall up out of your hips. Keeping that balance. And exhale, release, coming all the way up. Hands at heart center. One last big breath as our hands come up and overhead. And as we exhale, bringing those hands down to heart center. Continuing to breathe. Namaste.